Welcome everybody. Just seeing who's coming into our call here at the moment. Just bear with me for a second. Yeah, welcome everyone. It's wonderful to have so many people from all across the state joining us today for what's going to be a phenomenal session with Deloitte Private. Firstly, I'd like to welcome, of course, Damien Bones and his team from Deloitte Private, who are the best in the business. But really, I should begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we gather on today, all around the state in different places. Pay respect to their leaders, past, present, and emerging. Look, this great partnership with Deloitte is all about providing you all with absolutely cutting-edge information about the latest and greatest in finance and the way that you approach your businesses and what you need to really be thinking about as we head through this pretty interesting year. I just want to very quickly welcome Damien, Alex, and also Emma, who are on this call today, who are going to really lead us through what will be a terrific session. That's probably all I want to say, but again, to welcome you all to make sure you enjoy what's going to be a terrific event. If you can't see the whole morning, or not morning, but the whole session, we're also recording it, so you can later on hop onto our website and watch it at your leisure as well. But most importantly, Damien, welcome, and thank you so much for this morning. I'll pass across to you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and absolute pleasure to join you and the team in delivering specialised content, not only today, but across the course of the year, as it applies to the private market and more specifically small businesses and the families and individuals that own those small businesses as well. So, thanks again, Michael. As Michael mentioned, he alluded to the Deloitte Private brand. Myself and Alex from Tax and Legal and Emma from Risk Advisory, we're private market specialists. We largely play in the private market, again, with organisations that are owned by families or individuals. But it's definitely a passion of ours, and we've got a lot of content to draw on, specialised content as it applies to small businesses and those in the private market, not only from our experience here in Tasmania, but nationally and also globally as well. So it's a pleasure to bring that to you and share it with you. And beyond this session and also others, we're happy to share that with the TCCI, so we can distribute it to yourselves and other members. I'll just get you to flick forward, please, Alex. As I said, it's probably not common knowledge in Tasmania, but we have a strong presence in the private market, not only supporting businesses and families that own them, but also having a voice for things that matter in the private market and small businesses more specifically. We intend to share that with you not only today and some of the relevance of topics that have been at least top of the agenda for the last 2 years, but also the things that really matter to private businesses and also the impact that it has on the communities around them. So this is a sharing of information session on the back of the things that we've seen in the market over the last 12 to 24 months, and especially a disrupted market, for want of a better term. And as I said, we've got a lot of content that we can share with you over the course of the year as well. So we might just leap into the agenda. The ultimate outcome of today is to provide you with the things that we've seen and frameworks that we've been working with organisations across the country, particularly as a result of COVID, but also disruption as a result of some of the events that we've seen over the course of the last 2 years, and essentially landing on a plan. So helping organisations build a plan themselves. A lot of the information that we'll provide to you today is public. So after today, we'll share links with you. So it's kind of a do-it-yourself type kit, but we've been working with organisations in helping them implement a plan. And essentially, it's responding to events, it's responding to disruption, changing business conditions and environments, and helping organisations just simply build a plan, whether that's a change in direction for a business, whether it's consolidating, whether it's recovering from certain events. Importantly, it's where to start and how to continue. So we might just jump into the agenda. First of all, it's important to set the scene. Many of you would be familiar with the conditions that we've operated in over the last 2 years. But I'll hand over to Alex just to set the scene for the session.
Thanks, Damien. So the way we're going to approach this is to look at the scene from an Australian perspective and then dive into Tasmania. And then we're going to provide some Deloitte private perspectives of what we're seeing in the market over the last few months and what we expect to be quite topical over the next 6 to 12 months. So from an Australian perspective, what you can see here on the left graph is the Australian Consumer Confidence Index and how that has ebbed and flowed over the last 3 to 4 years, with the big spike being in March 2020 when the unknown of COVID reared its head in Australia. And during that time, it's ebbed and flowed, and the main, I suppose, dips have been over winter. So it'll be important to see what happens in the next 3 to 6 months as we approach winter, but also uncertainty in the market. So the dip in January 22 was obviously Omicron coming, and that's a new strain of COVID. So what we have seen is that Australia has dealt with the pandemic fairly well. We've been able to get our vaccinations at pre-booster level quite high, and it's left a lot of money in the market over the last 2 years with the inability to travel and invest. So what we're seeing, businesses are ready to kind of move into that next stage post-COVID. On the right-hand side, in the light green, you can see the unemployment rate, and in the dark green is the effective unemployment rate. So that factors in conditions where people have either left the labour force or where they were still employed but not really working during that JobKeeper phase. There were a large percent of people who are effectively sent home, still receiving JobKeeper, but not actually working and in, I suppose, delivering output to Australia. Next slide here, we have more of a Tasmanian perspective. So Tasmania, as we all know, has fared very well over the last 2 years in comparison to our kind of mainland states. And the reason for that is obviously, the very low case numbers. The border has been shut, so we've been kind of incubated to it all here in Tasmania, apart from kind of when things opened up in the last few months. So you can kind of see historically Tasmania was underperforming the Australian average. If you look at kind of back in 2010 through to around 2017, the performance then kind of spiked above the Australian average before COVID hit in March 2020. And then post-COVID, we've experienced huge economic growth, and we're expecting that's probably going to nosedive a bit now that borders are open and we have to learn to live with the virus. But obviously the last few years on that graph on the left are a forecast. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And then the graph on the right just shows how during the last 2 to 3 years, we've outperformed Australia. So without further ado, I'll move into what we're seeing from a Deloitte private perspective in the market. And there are kind of 4 or 5 main trends that we're seeing. The first is that there's a huge increase in ATO activity now that they've gone back to their principal function as a revenue collection authority. During COVID, they were given the task of administering JobKeeper and the cash flow boost and helping businesses that needed a favourable payment plan. That function has officially stopped, and we're definitely seeing that with our clients. There's a huge increase in ATO activity. They're back to their review and audit function, their debt collection responsibility, and also where you're trying to negotiate a payment plan, they're back to interest charging, trying to get their money back in the quickest amount of time. We're also seeing a reduction in business support, although there's a little bit of grant funding still available for those that have experienced a 30% decline from the state government. The grant funding is becoming less and less, and they're not dishing out those larger grants that they probably were during COVID. And obviously JobKeeper from a federal level has been cut off for a while, so we're not having that ability to help fund our labour force. Work challenges, it's a tight labour market at the moment, and you throw in the requirement to deal with close contacts and isolation rules. It's very difficult for employers at the moment, and we're definitely seeing that. We think the reintroduction of international borders and them being open will provide some benefits to certain industries, especially, you know, hospitality and maybe some of the agricultural areas that rely on foreign workers coming into Australia. So I think give that a few months and hopefully that will alleviate some of the pressures there. And then from a supply side challenge, we're obviously seeing cost increases and delays to supply chain. So you have to just look around the you know, the fuel prices at the moment to know what kind of supply side pressure there is, or if you're building a house, or if you're trying to order a car. We're all experiencing those pressures and delays at the moment. So it's going to be important that we obviously hone in on the strategy and developing a plan, which we're going to deal with now. So I'm going to pass on to you, Damien, and let you dig into that.
Thanks, Alex. So I'll just start by talking to the three key phases that we see or have seen organisations and small businesses dealing with during a disrupted economic and business environment. And I will start by saying that these three phases effectively are not linear in any way, shape or form, because at different times we've had organisations during the last 2 years dealing with each of the three phases that I'm just about to talk you through. So the way we think about an organisation's journey through any kind of disruption is respond. So if I'm disrupted, and particularly as a result of COVID over the last 2 years, how do I respond? What are the things that I need to be thinking about in the current situation in order to ensure that I keep the doors open, but also ensure that there is some form of business continuity and survival. Recover, so ensuring that once we're comfortable with the platform that we've set ourselves, that there is a plan for recovery and ensuring that we get the business back on track and that we're planning for the future again, and then thrive. And we have seen organisations thriving over the last 2 years or so, but Alex alluded to a couple of things that have occurred more recently, where we've seen organisations first respond, recover, thrive, and then have to respond again because conditions or the environment is changing around them, and no more so than when Tasmanian state borders opened a few months ago, where organisations that were thriving were forced to respond again. So as I said, it's not linear in any way, shape or form. We've seen businesses respond, recover, respond, recover, respond, recover. But I'll talk to the respond, recover, thrive framework a little more in a moment. The next is the way that we think about strategy here at Deloitte, which is what we call a cascade of choices. And strategy is effectively a series of interrelated questions that we ask ourselves, and in order to answer how we strategically operate our business into the future, we cascade those questions down through a series of effectively choices, because strategy is all about choices. The reason that I'm showing you this is because there is a theme throughout the framework that we've developed and shared with the community in order to respond and recover and thrive at any point in time. So strategy is essentially what is our aspiration as a business, and also the owners. What do we want to achieve? What is our guiding purpose? And what are our objectives for the future? Where will we play? That's essentially what will we do and where will we do it? What kind of business are we? What are the things that we will be doing? What are the services or products that we'll be delivering to the broader market, and what geographies will we be playing in as well. And then once we've made those choices, how do we win? So how do we access the market? How do we ensure that we get more than our fair share? How do we ensure that we're accessing the right customers? What is our value proposition? What is the model that is going to underpin what we choose to do? And importantly, in order to answer the three interrelated questions before that, how do we structure our business? So what capabilities must be in place? That's people, processes, and systems. And you'll see that the cascade not only flows down when we answer those questions, but it also flows back up. So if we answer the questions around capabilities and we can't ensure that we either embed or access the right capabilities to serve our where to play and how to win, then we need to reset our where to play and how to win. Hence, we call it a cascade of choices. I'll just get you to now move on, please, Alex. So just when we think about recovering the recovery phase, there are three key areas that we need to address. First of all, reflecting. So not only reflecting on the moments that have just happened and the issues that we're faced as an organisation, but also when times were good, what worked well, what are the things that we're most proud of, but also as a result of the immediate events, what are the things that need to change in our organisation? I heard a saying right at the start of COVID that we wish we weren't faced with fixing our roof on a rainy day. The start of COVID was definitely a rainy and stormy day, but the flip side of that is organisations should think about fixing their roof on a sunny day. And a lot of organisations were faced with difficult choices around this time. The second is restart. What do we need to think about for kickstarting our business now? What kind of workforce do we need? There is another saying that I reflected on during this time and it's been quite widely used since. What got us here will not get us there. So if we're restarting, what are the things that we need to do differently to serve us well for the future? And then revitalise. The first point there is COVID revealed new opportunities. I think it's wonderful how hospitality responded immediately. And this might seem like an absolute no-brainer to the audience, but responded immediately to takeaway and delivery type options where they previously hadn't been doing it. How do we work with a shrinking workforce and population in order to optimise outcomes? Alex alluded to it previously. The war on talent and the war on the next worker is definitely been challenging for a lot of organisations, and no one's really immune to that. But also thinking about optimisation as well. I mentioned the fixing the roof on a rainy day. It's when you're fixing a roof on a rainy day, a lot of organisations have had to fix it hard and fix it fast. What kind of opportunities has that presented for optimising your organisation to make it more efficient and lean and certainly fit for purpose for the current and future environments? I'll just get you to move forward. Thanks. So just some 6 key areas that our framework is designed to help you answer questions. The way that we have effectively categorised some of the decisions and some of the tactics for continuing to reflect and restart and revitalise the business. The first is understanding customer needs. So your customers and clients. It might sound like common sense, but what organisations have been forced to do is really understand their customers deeply. Not only the customers that they currently have, the customers they want to have, and also importantly, the customers that maybe they shouldn't have, as ruthless as that sounds. The second is cash, and cash is king, of course, no more so than through periods of disruption and change and also uncertainty. It's again, it might sound simple, but making the smallest change to things that organisations have previously taken for granted. And again, on a sunny day, organisations continue to see reasonable cash flow. When cash is disrupted, everything else is disrupted, and some small changes in things like working capital terms have seen organisations weather the storm and navigate through disruption. Alex also mentioned supply chain previously as well. A supply chain can be quite a broad concept, and I've got a value map of tactics that I'll take you through in a moment. But supply chain is something that has been disrupted quite a bit, as many organisations would know, and I'm probably telling you a bunch of stuff you already know. But ensuring that we have replacement products, orders in advance to meet demand, not only replacement products, but replacement options, and also workarounds, just to ensure that we can meet customer demands is critically important. And some of those opportunities not only as a result of international disruption, but it's also understanding what kind of substitutes exist and how can we access some of those substitutes. Workforce is another big one. I think in times of economic boom, we don't really think about our workforce a lot. I know small business and private businesses are forced to on a much more regular basis, but we had the opportunity to, I think, again, using that term, sunny day versus rainy day, we've had the opportunity to really revisit our workforce and understand where efficiencies and opportunities exist, and that the organisation is structured fit for purpose. And I think, again, we've been forced to as a result of shortage of workforce and low unemployment and the ability to access foreign workers. Digital, so something that we've worked on not only locally, but also nationally in Deloitte Private, is digitally enabling small businesses. And digital enablement has been proven to improve outcomes for small businesses by quite a bit, by up to 50% in some cases. And that's just to simply accessing tools that already exist, off-the-shelf tools, to ensure that our business is efficient as possible, that owners and management are spending less time in the business, and there's less reliance on workforce as well. And that can be anything from finance through to customer relations and stock management. And also changes in the workplace. So, of course, COVID has had an impact on how we physically manage business, just as a result of some of the restrictions that have been in place over time, and responding to those has been critically important. So, Alex, I'll just get you to flick to the next slide. I'm not going to go through this in detail, and we'll share this afterwards. This is part of the workbook that we delivered, we effectively constructed and delivered to the community. This is widely available and public, and again, we'll share it to this group and broader TCCI members over the coming days. Just understanding the levers that you can pull under each of those 6 key areas. And these are by no means exhaustive, but just to give you some examples of some of the levers that can be pulled. Understanding your customer needs, just something as simple as, is there an opportunity to access immediately adjacent or deliver immediately adjacent products or services? Things that don't take a lot of extra effort. Can we really double down on customer satisfaction type activities? Cash flow, just increasing the focus on our vendors with favourable payment terms. It might sound simple, but just thinking about how we can manage our cash flow in a much more optimal way. ensuring that we're working really closely on our accounts receivable and accounts payable days. And again, it takes that additional effort, but just focusing on where we're outside terms in that way. Supply chain, just ensuring that we're optimizing inventory is one way that we can work in our supply chain. Workforce, employee retention has been critical, and it's something that organisations have been implementing programs to ensure that that engagement with their existing workforce is high. That has been critical over the last couple of years, because, as Alex alluded to earlier, that accessing your next worker has proved very difficult. Digital enablement, just accessing tools that are immediately available at low cost off the shelf that will enhance business outcomes. Outsourcing has been another popular way of managing certain functions over the last 1 to 2 years, but also everything that comes with that. So ensuring that you're protected well from any cyber threats as well. And what's changed for the workplace, things like operational excellence and culture, corporate governance, but also the things that we've been forced to address over the last 1 to 2 years. Importantly, these tactics, and I'll go through this at the end, they're not exhaustive, but some of the examples that you can build into a plan for not only the immediate future, but the long-term future. I'll hand over to Emma.
Great, thanks guys. So what I wanted to talk about with you all was some examples about where certain companies or organisations might sit within this sort of respond, recover and thrive framework. And as Damien said, this isn't linear, so you could go back and forth between this depending on circumstances. And as well, I just want to call out too that, you might be in one of these particular sectors, but have a totally different experience as well. So, somebody who's working in the same industry might be having a different experience to you for whatever reason. So in terms of some of the examples that we've got from the industry side of things, if we think about in the transport and logistics space, in here we might have a courier who has had a lot of steady demand throughout the pandemic period, took on extra headcount, support ongoing demand, evolve procedures to improve their efficiencies and sort of set themselves up to thrive in this new normal, but now dealing with increasing cost of fuel. So push back into respond and having to more closely manage costs and cash flows as well. So, where they were in thrive, now coming back into this respond space. If we think about the construction industry, a company who has been able to sort of continue to operate throughout 2020 and 2021 with plenty of demand, but now responding in response mode due to an increase in the cost of materials and also supply issues. So shortages, as Damien mentioned as well, changes in lead times for ordering of things, maybe having to deal with new suppliers because they're not able to work with old suppliers due to shortages. So now managing these constraints against existing client contracts and client commitments. So with a really strong focus on their business continuity now and how deadlines are being impacted and how they're managing those customer expectations as well. So some other sectors that we have is, for example, the hospitality space. So we know in Tasmania that we were fortunate to have a period where we're relatively COVID free. So where we sort of, when we came out of those lockdowns, we had a lot of, local restaurants who managed to improve and sort of pivot more to a takeaway style service and really sort of improve what they're doing in terms of takeaway, and then with additional local foot traffic we're able to sort of edge towards getting back into the recovery sort of space, but now with borders opening we're seeing a bit less local activity around over that sort of Christmas period, which has impacted their ability as well, so back into sort of responding to this change in their environment, which is different to what they saw when it was the full lockdown and we still were doing a lot of takeaway, etc. Another sector is our domestic tourism. So again, being in lockdown meant that there was nobody sort of travelling around, but domestic tourism sitting in that recover space due to this more holiday at home mindset. So still being not quite thriving until borders are fully open, but being able to sort of sit in that recover space with a lot of local peoples that are getting out and about. We've also got, if we think about agriculture too, this is an example that I think Alex used with regards to workforce. So if we've got a farm who they're sort of relatively minimally impacted by COVID, except for in that sort of workforce space. So the demand for their product hasn't necessarily decreased significantly, but they're having issue accessing pickers and packers. So stuck in sort of this recover phase as well. And if we look to, I guess, somewhere that's pretty close to home for us in this professional services space, so during lockdowns, we were all able to work from home. Our clients were all working from home, everyone in the same boat. We were able to sort of get through what we needed to. We're in this sort of limbo space now where we are returning to the office, but we've got COVID active. We've got team members who are getting COVID, who are having to isolate. We've got face-to-face meetings that are needing to be rescheduled. We're seeing impacts to some of our timelines for clients because we're working from home previously. We've now got a lot more people that are out with COVID and potentially sick and unable to work, even if it is from home. So sort of dealing with this new world and also finding that right balance between people wanting to be in the office but not able to be there, and those that are still a bit hesitant on coming back in to the office as well. So we think about in this sort of space where sort of you might sit your business, and as well that this is sort of fluid. If we just flick on to the next slide, Alex, we need to be thinking about, well, where are you and what happens if we have sort of changes to interest rate increases, supply chain issues, if they continue to last as well for the next 6 months, and we've got workforce challenges that can't be resolved, or tax incentives change and we sort of impacted. How will that impact your business, and what plans do you have in place or need to have in place to move quickly into recover mode so that you can set yourself up to thrive? So moving back through that respond, recover, thrive, making sure that you've got the right plans in place so that if you do find yourself back in respond, that we're moving back into the recover phase quite quickly and setting yourself up to thrive. So on that note, I might hand back to Damien, who's going to run us through some of the tools that we have with regards to implementation, building a plan.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So I'm sure most of that probably made absolute sense to everyone on the call. And yeah, many of you may have been living some or all of that over the last couple of years. What we've found is small business have struggled to plan for the future. They've been responding and recovering for much of the last 2 years, and that is potentially likely to continue for some organisations, and some of the scenarios that Emma alluded to a little earlier. But also on top of that, yeah, some that we aren't aware of yet may result in changing conditions that we need to think about. So where we're landing towards the end of this presentation now is effectively helping small businesses build a plan. And this, again, we'll share all of this with you, but it might sound really simple, but sometimes understanding some of the tactics to help you respond, recover and thrive, setting the time aside to understand what they might be, not only using our value map that we'll share with you, but other things that will have an impact on your business, sometimes is really hard. And then putting it together in a sequential manner can sometimes be really difficult, but some of it's based on time. So hopefully we're making it really easy for you. There might be 15 to 20 things that you think of using our value map or other simple, easy to implement or effective tactics that may have an impact on your business. First, we just start by understanding the impact and implementation of those tactics. You know, what is the likelihood that it'll have a great impact on the business, and how difficult or otherwise is it to implement? And generally, those that are difficult to implement and have a lower impact, if we categorise them that way, well, they're not really a priority. But the things that will have the greatest amount of impact and the greatest ease of implementation will be the things that we prioritise immediately, so long as they fit in a natural sequence or order for us to implement as a business. So we've got 15 or 20 things. It's just as simple as having a bit of a mud map that looks like this on a whiteboard or up on the wall in your office to allocate all of the things that we think will have an impact and we could implement as tactics or priorities on our business. And then just flicking to the next slide, just some of the things that when we're working through our plan, what is in play. So, we've got 3 of the categories here, just as an example. Some of the actions that we're currently working on, but also some of the opportunities that may not be tactical, but apply to our business. So again, just something simple that you can use as part of your plan. But the most important one is the next one. And we've encouraged a lot of our clients and other organisations in the small business community just to have something as simple as this on the office wall, sequentially mapping out all of the tactics in order to set really simple and easy to understand priorities. This example is a 100-day action plan. It could be 3 months, it could be 12 months, whatever timeline makes sense to you. But those actions or tactics that have been developed using the roadmap, the value map, or the things that you've thought about under each of those 6 areas as they apply to your business, the way that we sequentially set them out, the way that I describe it to organisations that we work with is it's kind of like making a cup of coffee, right? So if your priority is to make a cup of coffee and that is the output that you desire in a certain period of time, then it's getting everything sequentially in order. So turning the kettle on, finding the coffee, finding a cup, putting the coffee in the cup. It's really breaking it down into that simple, easy to understand sequential manner. So when you get to the end of that series or sequence of tactics, that you have the output that you desire. It should be as simple as that, but it does take some time. And we appreciate that we're working with small to medium private businesses. So some of those key milestones that you need to put into your plan are things that are happening in your lives or things that are happening with your family. So, the first one might be Easter. So I need to block out that period for Easter because we're taking the kids away for school, or I've got an important small business or TCCI conference in June that I need to be present at. So I need to block out a few days for that, and so on and so forth. So building in the things that matter to you as a person and to you as a families or things that are important to the business as well is critically important to make sure that any plan works. Hopefully that makes sense. As I said, it's really simple, but organisations don't set the time aside to just make this simple plan come to life. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so finally, just some things to think about. I'm naturally a glass half full guy, but there's a lot of noise coming out of New South Wales and South Australia at the moment around a new strain of COVID. What that means, who knows? But the respond, recover, thrive that we alluded to earlier, again, it's not linear. Some of us may be responding again soon, so we don't want to be in a situation where we're fixing our roof on a stormy day. It's critically important to think about the things that we need to be thinking about if we do need to respond and recover again. So building that plan is absolutely critical. But also, you remember that cascaded choices framework that I put up earlier around thinking about what is our aspiration and purpose, what are our where to play choices, the things that we're doing and where we're doing them, and how do we win in those chosen areas. It's just simply building priorities that speak to that part of our business strategy. Strategy might sound like a really heavy word for private business But it's all about building a plan for the future. So what are the things that you need to be thinking about in business? Things like succession planning. Is there going to be an event at some point in the future with the organisation? So would we look to take on additional shareholders? Are there value maximisation activities that we need to think about? Do we have the most optimal structure from a tax, but also an operational point of view? They're only some of the questions that organisations are answering at the moment, but just really thinking about what really matters to the business, and will it ensure that it serves you well through respond and recover and thrive if we need to enter into any of those phases again in the future. I think that is most of what we had to talk through today. I just want to emphasise that the plan is the critical part. The inputs are yours, but ensuring that you do have a plan in order to ensure that you navigate through respond, recover and thrive if you need to again, but also any plan for the future. If you're thriving and want to continue to thrive, planning is critically important for any business. So thanks everyone. We do have a few minutes to take questions if anyone wants to come off mute or type any questions in. That might made absolute sense, Michael. And
I'd say, Damien, you have, which is terrific. And look, thanks for a wonderful presentation. The quality of the content from you guys is always first rate, and this is no difference. Can't wait for the next presentation as well. But thanks so much for this morning. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, thank you. As I said throughout the course of the presentation, we'll share this with the TCCI to distribute to those that are on the call, but also members more broadly. This is yours to use. It's hopefully simple and intuitive framework. There might be other frameworks that you've used before for your business that make sense, but we're landing on a plan and ensuring that we're planning for the future as a result of recent events, but also preparedness for future events is really, really important in our view.
That's great. Look, what I would say to the members too, all around the state on this call, is take advantage of Damien and the team with Deloitte Private, that their info is first rate. If you have a question, concern, or anything that you're worried about with your business, they're the people to call. And again, we've got a series of these presentations across the course of the year. I'm looking forward to each one of them. And if each one is as good as today's, it's going to be a ripper set of series of webinars. So thanks, Damien, so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks to you and the team.